Hello everyone, you're watching Eagle News America. I'm Alan Basoyahe coming to you from Los Angeles. It's Thursday, April 8, 2021. We have updates from our correspondents across North America. Marites Herrera in Granada Hills, California.
Department of Health reports cases of COVID variants in LA County.
Leila Agbalag in Bakersfield, California.
FEMA funeral expense relief now available to qualifying LA residents.
Anna Cui in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Las Vegas conventions events coming back in 2021.
Eva Basoyahe in Lancaster takes us to a COVID testing site which residents say is truly beneficial to their community. Don Omar Cuevas in Little Rock tells us about Governor Asa Hutchinson lifting Arkansas's mask mandate. Fanny Valdez in Edinburgh reports about Texas governor slamming the Biden administration for the disastrous decisions affecting unaccompanied minors in a federally run migrant facility. Bureau Chief Carlo Valdez in Union Township tells us about arts and cultural venues in New Jersey to receive $15 million in aid. Eagle News correspondent Aika Era in Sacramento tells us about a creativecon happening there to showcase local artists. Plus, for today's roundtable, we will talk about empanadas. Does our team like them as a meal or as a dessert? Find out later. Our coverage begins now. In his first attempt at getting gun violence under control in the country, President Joe Biden announces a series of executive actions targeting ghost guns, assault weapons, and red flag laws. The president, claiming a public health crisis, also calls on Congress to act. Take a look.
Today, we're taking steps to confront not just the gun crisis, but what is actually a public health crisis. Nothing I'm about to recommend in any way impinges on the Second Amendment. They're phony arguments suggesting that these are Second Amendment rights at stake from what we're talking about. I want to see a national red flag law and legislation to incentivize states to enact their own red flag laws. Today, I asked the Justice Department to publish a model red flag legislation so states can start crafting their own laws right now. Just like with background checks, the vast majority of the Americans support these extreme risk protection order laws.
With Congress unable to agree on broad new regulations like stricter background checks for gun buyers, Biden announced 6 executive measures which he said would help tamp down the crisis. These measures include a proposed rule to stop proliferation of ghost guns, as firearms built from home kits are known. The White House says these homemade weapons are especially of concern because they have no serial numbers and cannot be traced after being used in crimes. Tightening regulations on arm braces designed to stabilize pistols, a device used by the man who killed 10 people in Colorado last month. Under the rule, pistols with braces would be classified as short-barreled rifles, putting them under stricter control. Another is boosting support for agencies involved in tackling community violence and ordering the first comprehensive report on firearms trafficking in the United States since 2000. Nearly 40,000 Americans die each year from shootings. While mass shootings like recent killings in Colorado, Georgia, and California attract most attention, more than half of the annual death toll is due to suicide. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki says President Joe Biden is leading the charge on gun control, but that it is the role of Congress to introduce legislation. Secretary of Energy Jennifer Granholm also joins Psaki's daily briefing to announce funding opportunities for clean energy technology, as well as to comment on infrastructure and nuclear energy. Take a look.
Today, we are announcing another two funding opportunities for clean energy technology. One of them is to create next generation biofuels for airplanes and ships, which are very hard to electrify. And the second is to announce clean energy technology funding opportunity to reduce methane emissions from the coal, oil, and gas industry. Our economic competitors are working to corner the market on those opportunities. countries like China are pressing their foot on the pedal and revving up their electric engines, and they are thrilled to see that the United States is standing still while they are working to create jobs for their people. We have to modernize the nation's nuclear arsenal. We have to keep and maintain the stockpile to make sure that it is safe and effective, and we will continue to do that to ensure that we can deter nuclear aggression from other countries.
In other news, an expert told a court in Minneapolis on Wednesday the police officer accused of murdering George Floyd used inappropriate deadly force when kneeling on his neck for more than 9 minutes. Jody Steiger, a use of force specialist testifying for the prosecution, was questioned at the trial of Derek Chauvin, the white officer seen in phone footage kneeling on Floyd, who was black. The harrowing images of Floyd's arrest in May 2020 touched off protests against racial injustice and police brutality in the United States and around the world. Steiger, a Los Angeles police officer, said that Chauvin's actions were deadly force because Floyd was in the prone position.
Why is that? Because at the time of the restraint period, Mr. Floyd was not resisting. He was in the prone position. He was handcuffed. He was not attempting to evade. He was not attempting to resist. And the pressure that was being caused by the body weight could cause positional asphyxia, which could cause death.
Asked how much force was reasonable when Floyd was lying on his front, handcuffed and not resisting, Steiger said no force should have been used once he was in that position. He said an officer is only allowed to use a level of force that is proportional to the seriousness of the crime or the level of resistance. Defense attorney Eric Nelson asked Steiger if use of force sometimes looks bad, but it's still lawful. Steiger agreed, saying, yes, based on that department's policies or based on that state's laws. Prosecutors are seeking to prove that Floyd's death was due to asphyxiation, while Chauvin's defense claims it was due to illegal drugs in Floyd's system. Now for COVID news. Between the mountain ranges of Taiz, dozens of fresh graves are being hastily dug in Yemen's third city to deal with a spike in deaths from COVID-linked complications. Groups of men, most of them wearing neither masks nor gloves, carry caskets to Al Said Cemetery and its row upon row of new graves. At the same time, a truck arrives carrying mourners along with more bodies. People are struggling to bury their dead in the southwestern city amid a surge in cases of coronavirus that the war-torn country is badly equipped to combat. Besieged for years by Houthi rebels and their snipers, the gravediggers of Taiz are under constant threat and cannot work fast enough. Health measures such as wearing surgical rubber gloves to bury COVID-19 victims are not a priority here. Men in traditional costume gathered around the last freshly dug graves on Saturday for a funeral procession with the rumble of a bulldozer at work in the background. The United Nations says the number of new COVID-19 infections in the impoverished country has more than doubled in past weeks. Meanwhile, in Brazil, health workers treat COVID-19 patients in an intensive care unit at Rio de Janeiro's Ronaldo Gazzola Hospital as Brazil registers more than 4,000 COVID-19 deaths in 24 hours for the first time. The country reeled from a surge of infections that has made it the current epicenter of the pandemic. The coronavirus claimed 4,195 lives in the deadliest day of the pandemic yet for the hard-hit country, whose total reported death toll is now nearly 337,000, second only to the United States. Brazil's health system is buckling under the strain of the latest virus wave, which has forced doctors into agonizing decisions over which patients to give life-saving care and led cemeteries to hold nighttime burials to deal with the crush of coffins. The COVID air experiment is underway in Lyon at the screening center at the Palais des Sports in Gerland. On a voluntary basis, people who come for a PCR test can then blow into a type of giant breathalyzer. By detecting COVID-19 in exhaled air, this new technology will eventually enable rapid screening without the need for sampling. Dr. Alexander Gaimard, a virologist at the Hospice Civils de Lyon and is in charge of the COVID Air project, says, for now, they do not give the patient a result, but in the long term, the result will be evaluated in a minute and without taking any sample other than the breath. This means there will be no pain and no difficulties for some people for whom the nasopharyngeal swab could be really unpleasant. For today's COVID-19 numbers, according to the Coronavirus Resource Center of Johns Hopkins University and Medicine, as of 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Thursday, April 8, 2021, the number of cases of COVID-19 reported worldwide is now over 133,602,000. Top three on the list of countries with recorded cases are the US with over 30.9 million, Brazil with over 13.1 million, and India with over 12.9 million. To date, more than 2,894,000 have succumbed to this virus. The US leads the countries with the most number of COVID-19 related deaths with over 559,000. Brazil is next with more than 340,000, and Mexico has more than 205,000. When we come back, updates from California and Nevada. This is Eagle News America. Stay with us.
Hey there, Arnie Aquino here at Hatley Castle, one of the filming locations for the X-Men series. Don't forget to tune in to Digital Nest only on Net 25.
Factual.
We have to defeat the virus everywhere.
Timely information. Balanced, not only in the country, but also abroad.
I'm certain of one thing.
Interviews that people need to know. Watch Aguila Pilipinas, a one-hour newscast of reports coming from regional hubs in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. Know the important updates in Asia in ASEAN in Focus. Track the latest stories in the provinces in Aguila Provincia. Tune into Mata ng Aguila, the evening primetime news program of Net 25. Balanced and objective, Mata ng Aguila covers national and international issues, tackles news on business, health, science, and technology, entertainment, sports and human interest features, and current events. And Eagle News International delivers the latest global reports, impartial, accessible, and up-to-date. It brings to fore EBC's rich international scope and access to valuable information streams.
Well, thank you to thanks our help outdoor.
Catch these programs on Net 25. You can also watch our news programs through eaglenews.ph and Eagle News Facebook page and YouTube channel.
You're watching Eagle News America. I'm Alan Basoyahe in Los Angeles. Cases caused by COVID variants, particularly those first discovered in South Africa and Brazil, have been reported in Los Angeles. In Granada Hills, Meritus Herrera reports.
Thank you, Alan. The Los Angeles County Department of Public Health officials report that there is one case of the South African variant B1351 and 3 cases of the Brazilian P1 variant in Los Angeles County. These 2 variants are causing some concern as the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention have described them as being more contagious and less receptive to treatments. These are the first cases of the South African and Brazilian variant identified in Los Angeles County, and public health officials anticipate that they are likely more cases than that have not been detected or diagnosed. Currently, the state of California has a total of 10 reported cases of the South African variant and 33 identified cases of the Brazilian variant. Public health officials have been diligent in monitoring all variants in the county. Just this previous week, out of 70 specimens reviewed in the laboratory, 64% were the UK variant, B117, and 20% were the California variant, B1427 or B1429. In addition, 3 cases of the New York variant were also reported this week, but no cases of the Brazilian P2 variant. Barbara Ferrer, LA Public Director, states that with the majority of variants identified in Los Angeles County being variants of concern, it is even more important that we take all precautions during our reopenings to limit increases in community transmission. Wear a mask, distance when around in public, wash your hands, and make an appointment to get vaccinated when you are eligible. In Granada Hills, California, Mary Tess Huria, Eagle News. We live in interesting times. Back to you, Alan.
Tess, with all these variants being identified here in Los Angeles County, what's the COVID-19 situation update there here now?
Alan, the COVID-19 statistics here in Los Angeles continue to look very promising with constant lower numbers. COVID-19 hospitalizations has remained under 600 since April 3. Today, the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health reports 710 new COVID-19 cases, 52 new deaths, and 572 people hospitalized due to the virus. There is now a total of 1,223,791 COVID-19 positive cases and 23,388 deaths. These numbers may seem great, but our daily COVID-19 numbers have drastically reduced compared to the surge numbers seen as the beginning of this year. Alan?
So long as the numbers keep decreasing, Marites, maybe our families will be able to step out to Ellen's Empanada Emporium one of these days and grab a bite to eat. Speaking of, if you were going to go out and grab your empanadas, who would be rushing there first, you or your kids? Because I know you have 3 very healthy, growing young adults in your house.
That would be me, because I just have to look at them and say, mama first.
Right, and since they don't drive yet, at least I don't think so, I haven't seen them in a while, I guess they'll be dependent on you, and well, I guess you lay down the law there. All right, Marites, well, hopefully we will be able to talk a little bit more about empanadas in a little bit. Thank you for that report. Meanwhile, LA residents experiencing financial hardship caused by a loved one's death due to COVID-19 can now apply for funeral expense relief. Eagle News correspondent Leila Agbalag tells us how.
Thank you, Alan. Los Angeles County residents can now apply this month on Monday, April 12th, for funeral expense relief from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA. Many Angelenos have been greatly affected by COVID-19 with deaths in their families. FEMA has stepped up to provide the much-needed financial assistance for funeral expenses caused by the pandemic. To qualify, Angelenos must meet the following 3 requirements. First, the death took place in the United States, which includes the U.S. territories and the District of Columbia. Secondly, the death certificate must state that the cause of death was due to COVID-19. And lastly, the one applying must be a U.S. citizen, non-citizen national, or a qualified non-citizen that had funeral expenses after January 20th, 2020. As for the person who died due to COVID-19, there are currently no requirements on their residential or legal status. Los Angeles residents may apply for more than one deceased individual as long as they are able to show the required documentation of paid funeral expenses. But if there are more than one person who assisted to pay for funeral expenses for one deceased individual, then they should submit only one application listing applicant and co-applicants. The maximum amount of the funeral assistance that FEMA will provide is $9,000 per funeral and $35,500 per application. In Bakersfield, California, Leila Agbalag, Eagle News. We live in interesting times. Back to you, Alan.
So Leila, what kind of documents should LA residents gather in preparation for when they are ready to apply for this FEMA funeral relief?
Alan, Angelenos need to start finding the following documents so that they will be ready to apply. First, the official death certificate that specifies death was either directly or indirectly caused by COVID-19 and that the death took place in the United States or U.S. territories, including the District of Columbia. Second, documents showing the funeral expense like receipts and funeral home contracts that show the applicant's name, deceased person's name, funeral expense, and dates of the incurred expenses. Third, any proof of funds received from other sources that went to cover funeral costs, like the other government agencies and the other organizations. Los Angeles residents should also take note that FEMA will not pay for funeral expenses that were covered by insurance companies or other government agencies to avoid any duplicate of benefits already provided. Alan?
So on Monday, Layla, where should Angelenos go to apply for this financial relief? And, so that they can avail of this obviously much needed benefit from FEMA.
Good question. So Los Angeles residents just need to call the dedicated toll-free number of the COVID-19 Funeral Assistance Line by dialing 844-684-633 Monday through Friday between the hours of 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Central Time. Angelenos need to remember that they can begin calling this coming Monday, April 12th. FEMA representatives will answer to assist callers in completing the application. There will be no online applications, so the only way to apply is by calling the toll-free number. There will also be multilingual services for those not fluent in the English language. After completing the application through the phone with representatives, applicants will then be guided in submitting the required documentation by uploading online, faxing, or through mail. Thanks, Alan. Back to you.
Layla, before we let you go, while we certainly join mourners who have lost their loved ones, we also join with them in the hope that one day or someday soon, we'll get back to celebrating life. As such, one way that I know that we can celebrate is over some good empanadas. So going back to the whole Ellen's Empanada Emporium, which I don't know if you've ever visited that place. If you were going to stand in that Ellen's Empanada Emporium, would you gravitate towards more the sweet or the salty, savory empanadas?
This is a good question, Ellen. I'm actually going to be in the LA area tomorrow, so if Ellen's is over there, I'll definitely go ahead and try it out. But lately, I've been craving for sweet things, so I'd probably gravitate towards more sweet things. My grandma makes empanadas from hand, scratch, but she puts raisins in it, so it makes it a little sweet. Not a fan of raisins, but I guess with my grandmas, you get the best of both worlds. So. Yeah.
Can't argue with grandma's recipe. Thanks, Layla. We'll talk to you in a little bit. They're coming back. Oh, yes. Conventions are returning to Las Vegas this year. Bureau Chief Anna Kui joins us tonight with the details.
Thank you, Alan. That's right. Since Nevada Governor Steve Sisolak increased the large gatherings capacity to 50% in March, the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, or LVCVA, and Informa Markets, the destination's largest trade show organizer, are partnering to bring meetings and conventions back to Las Vegas in 2021. Informa Markets World of Concrete will be the first large show to return to Las Vegas in June at the Las Vegas Convention Center. And according to the LVCVA, this is the first large-scale trade show to return to the U.S. market since the pandemic, brought in-person meetings to a halt. So Nevada's new directive requires meetings, trade show, and entertainment venues to certify through the state's Department of Business and Industry. Of course, Alan, safety and the well-being of everyone is still the #1 priority. And, to make sure that they will follow the state's health and safety requirements and protocols, such as maintaining safe social distancing, wearing face coverings, and practicing good hygiene and cleaning measures. The Las Vegas Convention Center was actually awarded the Global Biorisk Advisory Council, or the GBAC STAR Facility Accreditation by ISSA, which is the world's leading trade association for the cleaning industry and considered the gold standard for safe facilities. So that, can give some assurance to event planners from all over the country, or even on an international scale, to consider bringing their events back to Las Vegas. Speaking of health and safety requirements, other venues for conventions and meetings, MGM Resorts, who actually pioneered their Convene with Confidence program in September 2020. And since they did that back then, they've actually, according to their website, they've been able to hold over 300 meetings, of course, on a smaller scale. But because the industry is opening up, they're adding cutting-edge enhancements to their program by offering meeting planners the option for on-site rapid molecular COVID-19 testing, delivering highly accurate results for events large and small. So I wondered how that would work. So this is what they said. Prior to the event, attendees will download a clear mobile app to set up their account, put in their bio data in there. And then before entering the venue, attendees will answer a series of health survey questions. And then upon arrival, attendees will take the molecular or antigen test, and they can access results by linking their testing account to the Health Pass through the app. And then they'll have their temperature checked at the kiosk, scan their QR code to share their health insights. Based on survey answers and test results, users are issued either a red or green health pass on their app. So Alan, if you have green, that means you can go ahead, enter the event. But if you have red, it will indicate that you need further testing and healthcare support may be required. So some of the events that are coming up, Alan, for those of you who are a Star Trek fan, Star Trek convention to be held at Rio Hotel in August, CinemaCon 2021 also in August at Caesar's Palace, and one of my favorite, the National Association of Broadcasters, or NAB, usually held in April, is scheduled for October. In Las Vegas and Anaheim, Eagle News, we live in interesting times. Back to you, Alan.
Anna, before we let you go, we just have two quick questions for you. And I'm going to preface it by saying that both of these questions start with the words, believe it or not. Question number one, believe it or not, I've never been to the Las Vegas Convention Center. Never. And I've heard that they're going through an expansion. Are there any updates you can share with us?
Yes. So first off, Alan, I invite you to the National Association of Broadcasters, or NAB, convention in October. I will share with you how you can apply for credentials to come to that. That would be your first time coming. You have to check it out. Now, yes, in addition to the expansion of the Las Vegas Convention Center, I don't know if you've heard of Elon Musk's The Boring Company and their underground tunnel projects. Well, they finished the Vegas Loop, which is the underground, what they're calling people mover. It's a 1-mile tunnel that will, right now, they finished the one that's right underneath the Las Vegas Convention Center, and you can actually see that in the pictures there. They will have driverless Tesla cars who will move these, attendees from one end of the property to the next. Usually, when you're walking, Alan, and I've walked that property for many conventions, it can take us, about 20 to 30 minutes, depending on the crowd. But with those cars going as fast as 155 miles per hour, that will cut down to, they say, less than 2 minutes. So that's exciting. It's not up and running. They don't plan to, to have it fully operational until conventions are really coming back. Alan?
I can't wait to join you for NAB. Our second believe it or not question has to do with our roundtable discussion. Believe it or not, I probably eat too many empanadas than I should. But you probably believe that. So
I probably believe it.
Vegas, yeah, I know. So Vegas, I mean, we know it for all of the wonderful restaurants along the Strip. Now that everything's starting to come back, have you had an empanada, a good empanada there off the Las Vegas Strip?
Yes, I've had empanadas. I can't think of a place right at the Strip that offers it. But yes, I do like empanadas.
Great. Well, we'll certainly explore the Las Vegas Strip. And if you're ever in Los Angeles, I'll take you to Ellen's Empanada Emporium. I think you'll have a blast.
All right. That's the deal, Alan. Thank you.
That's my exchange for NAB. Up next, another story from California and updates from Arkansas and Texas. Eagle News America will return shortly.
Events happen around us all the time, in our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced, eagle news, because we live in interesting times.
Look to NHK World Japan for news of the coronavirus outbreak across the globe. You'll find updates and insights in the specialized section of our website. Catch up with programs on your schedule through the free video on-demand service. Learn how to stay in shape and maintain your health deliciously. Ready when you are. NHK World Japan.
It's time to take one step further and face the impossible. Time to search the unknown and fight for the truth. Time to overcome boundaries and connect the world. It's time for DW News.
Watching Eagle News America. I'm Alan Basoyahe in Los Angeles. Lancaster residents are saying a free COVID testing and flu shot site brought to their community by the Iglesia Ni Cristo or the Church of Christ and Los Angeles County has helped lessen their worries. EBC's Eva Basoyahe with this feel-good story.
Lancaster, California is located along the northern fringes of Los Angeles County. For residents here, access to COVID-19 testing can often mean long-distance travel and waiting in lines, sometimes for hours. But thanks to a collaboration between the Church of Christ and Los Angeles County, members of this high-desert community receive free COVID-19 testing and flu shots, all without having to leave town.
What you're seeing today with the Church of Christ bringing people together and bringing the community together is an example of what is so precious up here in the Antelope Valley in Lancaster. It is an incredible place. It's called the High Desert, so it gets really cold, as you can see with our jackets, and it gets really hot. It's an amazing, amazing place.
I live a block away, and I was just going to get some breakfast, and here it was, and I asked him, you know, do I need an appointment? He's like, no, and I was like, is it free? And he's like, yeah, but they got my insurance information, but so I thought, since I was exposed a couple weeks ago, I might as well get tested, you know, so I don't give it to somebody else.
Back in the summertime, there wasn't any place to do it. You couldn't find a place. And so we wanted to test ourselves periodically just to see if something happened, even though we didn't have any symptoms. And this is a terrific for the people because it's convenient, it's close to the area around here.
I am a special education secretary. I feel that it is important and very beneficial to know my status of if I, you know, am COVID-free, because I want to make sure that, one, my family is safe, and two, that my coworkers and the students that I work with at school, we know, you know, what my status is so that I am able to work there.
The flu vaccine and also the COVID-19 testing is free of charge. This is what the Church of Christ is all about. The things that we can share with our fellow men, making kindness contagious, serving the community, giving back to the community what is due.
The Church of Christ is leading by example, and it comes as no surprise to me because I know that they are very active in the community and they want to give back. And so, you know, today is just another example of the amazing work they do, both in the spiritual side, but also in the health side, helping LA County residents, especially up here in Lancaster, which has been hard hit. There have been many people impacted by COVID, especially economically. So, you know, the Church of Christ has really made a difference and is stepping up and helping us each and every day.
With more and more people receiving coronavirus inoculations, large-scale COVID testing events should start to thin out. When asked what they would do then, Church of Christ representatives told us that they are open to the idea of being a future host site for the administration of COVID-19 vaccinations.
Who knows, afterwards we might be having the COVID vaccine after this, you know, from the government too. And we're very much willing, the church, to serve the community.
In Lancaster, California, Eva Basayahe, Eagle News, we live in interesting times.
For our viewers around the world, Lancaster is a long-standing and bustling city, but it is a bit cut off from the COVID-19 testing, so having community COVID testing there is certainly a big service to them. Thanks, Eva, for the report. Arkansas residents are now allowed to not wear masks in public. Eagle News correspondent Don Omar Cuevas has the details.
Thanks for having me. This is Don Omar Cuevas reporting from Little Rock, Arkansas. In regards to COVID-19, there have been over 330,000 cases, with about 260,000 recoveries and about 5,600 deaths as of the 7th of April. With only 244 new cases being documented compared to the previous day's records, it can be said that the COVID situation in Arkansas is getting better. Of the almost 2 million doses of the COVID-19 vaccine in Arkansas, about 1.3 million of them have been given to those who are eligible. Over 27,000 doses have been administered since the day before. Recently, Arkansas has taken yet another step forward in its vaccination plan. As of March 30th, all Arkansans aged 16 and above became eligible for the COVID-19 vaccine, regardless of health status or occupation. Governor Asa Hutchinson continues to encourage the citizens of Arkansas to get vaccinated, as shown by a recent tweet he posted on the 7th. The tweet says, "With COVID-19 cases increasing in other states, we are in a race to get everyone vaccinated. This is the key to victory. If you are over 16, let's get the dose." You heard the man. If you're eligible, go ahead and get it. I got my first dose of the Moderna vaccine last Friday, and I'm glad I'm able to do my part to keep my fellow Arkansans safe. Governor Hutchinson has lifted the statewide mask mandate as of March 30th. This means that citizens of Arkansas are no longer required to wear masks in public. However, businesses are still allowed to require masks, and the governor wants citizens to obey the rules of businesses. Even though we don't have to wear masks in public anymore, it doesn't mean we shouldn't. Do what you can to keep us all safe. In other news, the governor announced earlier this week that April 2021 in Arkansas has now been proclaimed Month of the Military Child. According to the governor's proclamation, the Month of the Military Child is for giving thanks to the families and children of the men and women in the military. Let's all come together to appreciate the military families we know, and of course, those who serve our country. As always, keep safe wherever you are. In Little Rock, Arkansas, Don Omar Cuevas, Eagle News. We live in interesting times. Back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Don Omar, and we join you in saluting military families as well. Governor Greg Abbott of Texas is blaming the Biden administration for the deplorable conditions unaccompanied minors are suffering at a federally run migrant facility in Texas. Eagle News correspondent Fanny Valdez reports.
Thank you, and howdy from the Lone Star State. Our news today brings us to San Antonio, Texas, where on Wednesday, Texas Governor Greg Abbott held a press conference.
The governor made his announcement in front of the Freeman Coliseum, which was turned into a makeshift shelter on March 30th. as a federally run facility to house unaccompanied migrant children. He announced that the state has received complaints and allegations of sexual assault, child abuse, neglect, a shortage of staff to properly oversee all the children inside the facility, and that some of the children were not eating throughout the day. Other complaints alleged that children who tested positive for COVID-19 are not being separated from children who tested negative. In a press release, Governor Abbott stated these deplorable conditions were a direct result of the president's refusal to secure the border and the lack of planning for the fallout by the administration. He called on the Biden administration to close the facility, to stop further abuse, and to move the children to other federally run facilities in other states where the federal government has the space, the staffing, and the resources to ensure the children's safety. The governor is also directing the Texas Department of Public Safety and the Texas Ranger to immediately begin investigations. He called on the Biden administration to act now to protect these children, secure the border, and end the crisis. Stay tuned to Eagle News for further updates.
In Edinburgh, Texas, I'm Fanny Valadez, Eagle News. We live in interesting times. Back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Fanny, for those updates. Up next, updates from New Jersey and Sacramento, and our round table about National Empanada Day.
Essential or non-essential, lugaw and other food has always been a vital part of our culture. Our food defines our heritage, connects communities, bridges differences, and unites us as a nation. We are celebrating Food Filipino Month this April that aims to promote and preserve local culinary and the role they play in Filipino culture and heritage.
When we are talking about the food itself, it's basically essential. And one major type of food is lugaw or arroz caldo. Kailangan balikan natin yung whys natin. And ano pa ba yung gusto mong marating? As long as you have that discipline. And number one, yung strategy. Importante kasi dito diskarte ngayon.
John Melchor, the founder of the Philippine Culinary Heritage Movement, will share his thoughts on why we are commemorating the importance of Filipino cuisine and how it helps us create our identity as Filipinos in this episode of Open for Business.
Start up your weekday mornings with edutainment, news, and information kasama ang inyong paboritong Net25 shows. Samahan ang inyong paboritong morning barkada sa Pambansang Almusal at 5 a.m. Tatalakayin mga pangunahing balita sa pagtutulungan ng Radyo Agila at Net25. Samahan si Weng de la Fuente sa Balitalakayan, 7 a.m. Saganang Mamamayan at 8 a.m. NHK World at 9 a.m. Eagle News International at 10 a.m. At mga balitang dapat niyong malaman mula sa Agila, Pilipinas at 11 a.m. This is your morning startup every weekday mornings only here on Net25.
Arts and cultural venues across the state of New Jersey will be receiving $15 million in aid as Governor Phil Murphy signed into law a COVID relief aid for them. In Union Township, Carlo Valdez reports.
Thanks, Alan. Governor Murphy on Thursday signed into law S3521, which will provide $15 million in federal COVID-19 relief aid for arts and cultural venues all throughout New Jersey. Here's Governor Murphy with some words. Let's take a look.
Ever since the pandemic took hold of our state, as I mentioned about 13 months ago, our efforts have been focused on two areas. First, and most importantly, to save every life we could. and to protect our residents and communities from a deadly virus. And to do that required us to make some very hard choices that we knew would directly impact not only our downtown economies broadly, but our arts communities and cultural institutions specifically. And so second, we knew we had to stand up programs that would help keep the future of the arts in New Jersey bright, even if our stages, as you rightfully point out, went dark. So between Tim and team at the EDA and the Arts Council, I count folks that you're almost, I think, 1,400 grants combined into the arts community. And all of them have been made possible, and this is an important point for you, Frank, through the federal pandemic relief funds that the congressman and his colleagues were able to secure for our state. I'm frankly not sure that any other state in America has put more money per capita, if you will, into arts than New Jersey.
This bill is part of a $5 $100 million relief effort designed at helping New Jersey small businesses restored from the year-long pandemic. And as for coronavirus stats and numbers, New Jersey reports of 3,758 new positive PCR tests, pushing the total to 827,795. Sadly, New Jersey is reporting 35 new confirmed deaths, pushing the total to 22,210 lives lost. In Union Township, New Jersey, Carlo Valdez, Eagle News, we live in interesting times. Back to you, Alan.
Thank you, Carlo. We look forward to hearing more about the resurgence of arts and small businesses there in New Jersey. Now, more good news about the arts. Sacramento local artists get to shine this weekend. These artists will showcase how their craft is battling and surviving the pandemic. Eagle News correspondent Ika Era files this report.
With what seemed like a never-ending struggle during the past year with the pandemic, unrest throughout the world, and violence towards community members, Sacramento artists are finding a way to share their voice with others. Due to the pandemic, artists had to be quick in order to adapt while also being able to share their art and music with the community. On the weekend of April 10, local nonprofit artists will hold a two-day virtual event known as Creativecon. The event will aim to show that despite the pandemic, artists are still thriving and are quick to adapt to the ever-changing world. Creativecon will have live performances, panel discussions, a socially distanced drive-in screening, and local restaurants offering takeout food. All the proceeds will go to local nonprofit artists along with the Creativecon facilitators. The program and free registration can be found on artistofsacramento.squarespace.com. It is clear to see that despite the difficult year the world has gone through, members of each community continue to look towards the brighter days. Communities have continued to come together to fight against hatred, violence, and unrest throughout the past year, and with that, a sense of connection and camaraderie has blossomed throughout each of these communities. With most of the past year spent in solitude, Sacramento local artists continue to thrive in making sure that each community member looks forward to hope. Through their work, the community is reminded that they are not alone during this time and that each of their voices are being heard. While the events in the past year, along with this year, continue to be virtual, the Sacramento community is finding ways to ensure that although each of us may be far apart, we still remain close at heart. As always, please continue to take care of yourselves and each other. In Sacramento, California, Ika Era, Eagle News, we live in interesting times.
Solid message out of Sacramento. Thanks, Ika. Now, according to nationaldaycalendar.com, empanada comes from the Galician, Portuguese, and Spanish verb empandar, meaning to wrap or coat in bread. It also talks about how it's made by folding the dough or bread around a seasoned stuffing. The stuffed dough is then baked or fried. And now we want to bring our team of newly elected empanada experts to join us to talk about all things empanada. Why don't we go ahead and bring you there they are, yes. I want to start first with Layla, because I have it on good authority. Not only do you and I like to eat empanadas, but you also like to potentially cook. So why don't you talk to us? Do you have any recipes that you could share with us?
So I've never actually made them on my own. I grew up with my grandma making them. So whenever she would babysit me or I'd visit her, she'd be like, all right, sit down with me. You're going to make empanadas. But she puts like potato. Of course, like the ground beef. I know that that's in a lot of the savory ones. I can remember, she puts like potato in it. She puts raisins in it. I'm not a huge fan of raisins, but after eating it so many times, it's grown on me. I'm also a huge bread person. I love bread, especially when it's like the pastry dough. So yeah, my grandma makes everything from scratch. Unfortunately, I don't have any recipes, but when you asked me earlier, I started looking up recipes. And Alan, I just started a like low carb lifestyle because I love bread, I love rice, pasta. So I was looking up low carb empanadas, and it is possible. You can make them. So if we have any viewers out there who are low carb, don't feel left out. We have low carb empanadas for you. Unfortunately, not the savory ones because of course sugar. But yeah, I mean, I think after this I might have to go in the kitchen and try making some empanadas, and then when I'm in LA, I'll drop some off to your house, Alan. Might just have to do it.
Well, Layla, my door's always wide open, especially if you're bearing gifts like that. You know, the description you just made brought back, I think, memories to all the households watching this broadcast right now. They could probably just smell the kitchen and hear their grandmother's voice, and those who are fortunate to still have grandma with them. So thank you for that. Now you talk about the low-carb empanadas. Could we perhaps entice you into creating a video and also uploading it for our new Eagle News broadcast so that we can see what a low-carb empanada would look and taste like?
I might need to get approval from you, Alan, before, just to make sure that the recipe is good and tastes good for the viewers. But yeah, we can go and get something in the works so that our low-carb viewers don't feel excluded from our empanada discussion this evening.
So you heard that, Marites. I'm being asked to taste test. At least that's the translation that I understood. And so absolutely, I'll go to check out what Layla is doing for that low-carb empanada treat. And speaking of you, Marites, what do you have to share for us? You know, what we want to ask actually is baked or fried? What's your option, or your choice rather, when it comes to empanadas?
I can take any of them, actually. They're all so good. But we're talking about empanadas. I know Filipinos, we have them, but I don't know if you've been to Porto's, Alan, but their empanadas are great too. You can't go to Porto's and not have empanadas. So, I mean, you might have to go there now that we're talking about it.
Oh yes, Marites, I've been to that establishment many times, so much so that they've actually named a cheese ball after me, and it wasn't just because of my bad jokes. Now, when we're talking about, you know, establishments, you know, I keep talking about this Ellen's Empanada Emporium. I hope one day you'll be able to go there, and if you do, you can bring your kids with you. Now, what about yourself? Do you like store-bought or restaurant-created or homemade? What's your flavor?
Well, homemade, I don't cook, so restaurants I think are the best. They're just mainly freshly made, but store-bought also can't hurt. Empanadas are empanadas. They just fill the tummy, and then you're just set for the rest of the time.
Well, I do have to agree with you there, Marites. The best empanada I ever ate are the ones that somebody else cooked. Now let's talk about savory, you know, the savory, salty versus sweet. Which do you and your family gravitate to more?
I never liked the raisins. I'm so sorry. I can't. The raisins drive me crazy. So it has to be the salty, the meaty. Those are the best empanadas. And so if you're asking me dessert or meal, it has to be the meal. It's more hearty. You know, it just fills you up.
There you go. Nothing wrong about disliking raisins as long as we love grandma. Thanks, Tess, for sharing with us. Now we go to Anna. Anna, you know, we talked a little bit before about Vegas and empanadas. Share with us. Tell us all things about empanadas in your experience.
Well, I mean, here in Vegas, just like everyone else, I've tried the store-bought. But the best empanadas I've ever had is it's Myra's. She's a Filipino lady who makes them at her home. She has a business at home, along with other pastries, Filipino pastries that she makes, and she makes the best empanadas as far as I'm concerned, Alan. So I don't cook, just like Maritas. We have a running joke in the family that you have to be blood related to me to be able to eat my cooking so that you don't get offended. So good luck to you, Lila, for trying out the recipe. And yes, we want to see a video of it after Alan, tastes it and gives it a thumbs up.
Thanks, Anna. Viewers around the world, if you didn't notice, Anna kind of threw down the gauntlet there, mentioning that Myra's is the best ever, kind of disregarding my whole Ellen's Empanada Emporium, which actually
well, you said, Alan, you did say Vegas. So here in Vegas, that's what I know. That's who has the best empanadas. But I will have to check out Ellen's Empanadas if I ever make it down to LA one of these days.
Well, not to worry, Anna, because remember our deal, the nab for me, and I'll bring over a box of Ellen's Empanadas from her Empanada Emporium.
That's right. It's a deal.
Now, before we wrap things up, we have been getting a few messages asking from our viewers asking about this Ellen's Empanada Emporium. My producers over there are looking at me. They said they Google searched it, can't find it, and I'll tell you exactly how. This is actually it's not a restaurant and it's not a catering establishment. If you listen carefully, Ellen, the reason why that name sounds familiar is because I'm named after Ellen. Ellen is my mom, and the Emporium I'm talking about is just her kitchen. She does not own a business, but because she always watches her son's broadcast, I'm kind of giving her the hint right now. Mom, when you're watching this program, I expect your Empanada Emporium, in other words, your kitchen, to be open for business for your son. Also, because I have to fill orders now with my lovely correspondents. Thanks, everyone, for joining us on this discussion about empanadas. And before we go, like we always do, at the end of every broadcast, we don't forget to recognize the efforts of our healthcare workers, first responders, and essential workers by giving them a round of applause. Would you join me, please? A round of applause. We want to thank you for being our modern-day heroes. We certainly appreciate you. That is today's Eagle News America. Thank you for joining us. I'm Alan Basoyahe. We live in interesting times.